Welcome to On a Way with Beryl Bachman in conversation with Lynelle Kenned. Lynelle is a multidisciplinary performing artist. Today, we will talk about her early career, the beginnings thereof, and her outlook and approach to life and work. Do enjoy this conversation with us as much as we did. So good to have you here with me today, Lynelle. You are such a talented artist, a beautiful person, and it's a privilege for me to have this conversation with you.
Thank you for having me. It's such a wonderful opportunity for us to sit down and really have a nice talk. So thank you for
Yes.
having me.
So, what interests me about you is I think of you as a lifelong artist, a lifelong singer in particular. How would you describe the beginnings of your career?
Thank you, Auntie Beryl. I think there's a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And I want to take that a bit further and say that it takes a community to support an artist. And that kind of nurturing of a natural talent or a natural gift is really something that started early on in my life in the community that I grew up in, Paul, or specifically Paul East. We were very closely tied to the church and the music development in the church. So I grew up with my entire family, everybody either singing in the church choir and playing an instrument. And music was always just a natural part of our family life, like in our celebrations at Christmas time and Easter time. So I didn't think that at that stage that there was anything particular or special about it, because at that age you kind of just assume that everybody grows up like that. But then when I started school, I was privileged enough to go to a school where there was a music teacher. And I started at a young age already with instruments. I played piano as a child, all the way from grade one up into university level. And I also picked up the violin and later switched over to the cello. And I always just sang because everybody in the family sang. Then towards the end of my grade 10 year in 2004, there was a national youth choir that was being launched by Andre van der Merwe, who also conducts the university choir at Stellenbosch. And a friend of my father saw that and he told the family about it, encouraged me to audition. I auditioned, and I think the inclusion then when I became part of the choir was the thing that changed the trajectory of my life professionally, at least. As part of the choir, we were exposed to people who make a profession of this. And one of the productions that I remember that had a big impact on me was seeing Cape Town Opera and the Cape Philharmonic's production of Showboat in 2005. And I remember sitting there as a youngster at the Artscape Opera House and just thinking, wow, I've always loved music. I didn't know that you could tell stories like this on this scale through music. And after that, I spoke to my music teacher at the time about really finding out what were my options of taking it further into a tertiary level and making a career out of it. So in a way, I feel that the natural talent was there, but the nurturing at specific points was also very important, and that this career or this calling really chose me. And it's been such a beautiful, charmed life to practice this and be part of a wider arts community where we are giving back and connecting to communities, and really not just being on stage and separate from the audience, but being part of milestones in people's lives is very special. You know, weddings and funerals, and just I think as an artist, being part of the emotional life of a community is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yes, and so you started out with music being part of your life, really,
Yeah.
and with instruments and singing. And how did you develop that during your tertiary education? Because you then became this multidisciplinary artist, performing artist?
The tertiary training was invaluable for developing the technical aspects and the foundation of the technique. But I think as I also finished my tertiary education at that time, looking at what kind of career you want to create, I think I realized pretty soon that the traditional trajectory of what an opera singer can be, and an opera singer from Cape Town or South Africa or Africa, the continent, most of our artists, or a lot of them, have to go abroad and become part of, an international community, and it can be a very difficult, lonely life of living out of a suitcase and being very isolated. En ek dink ek is 'n bietjie meer community vas. I needed that connection to also stay connected to my kom vandaan and to be based here, and rather use this as a platform to then go out and do other things. And because of that, there was a while in 2012 at the beginning of that year where I was teaching, and I loved that so much, back at the Frank Peterson Music Center, where I also had a lot of my tuition when I grew up musically with the violin and the cello. And at that stage, that was another one of the unexpected, I want to say, detours that my life took. At that stage, I'd had stage experience in the opera school, but I'd never been on camera before. I didn't have an interest in other sides of the performance career that were outside of classical singing. And at that time, there was a national presenter search that was happening on the program Top Billing at that time. My mom saw them advertise it on TV, and she encouraged me to go, en ek het eers nie belang gestel nie. You know how we always say like, nee mommy, ek wil nie gaan nie. And she encouraged me because I think she saw a lot of the skills that I had developed in my performance career were maybe transferable or applicable to a different kind of performance on screen. And so ek het op die ouend toe net gegaan so that I could say, sien mama, ek het gegaan en niks het daarvan gekom nie. And actually then, surprisingly, I did well in that competition, and the panel saw that there was something here that was also transferable to the screen. And then it launched an entirely different career for me of becoming a TV presenter, hosting things, becoming an MC, doing more voiceover work also, and corporate training videos. And I found that instead of it being a completely different, separate career, that it also was complementary to the singing. And van daar af, I think it just opened up my mind to maybe not putting myself in a box so much. It was also through the presenter search, the one day we went to Expresso, which is a sister program, the breakfast TV show, where some of the contestants in the competition were featured on the show. And by chance also, like again, all of these beautiful synchronicities, David Kramer's daughter was in the studio, and the Cat and the Kings guys were also in the studio on the same program. En ek het gesing as part of the showcasing the contestants. And so Jessie heard me, and she told her dad, who was in the process of writing a different musical at that time, Orpheus in Africa, that there's this young soprano that she heard on the show, and maybe it'll be worthwhile to also hear her, bring her in for an audition. And then that was a different part of my career that then opened up doing musicals for the first time. So it's been such a fascinating journey, and I think what's been really invaluable to learn is that if you don't box yourself in, but you keep working hard and you stay open, then there are different opportunities that you attract to yourself, whether by chance or providence, that can have you develop in ways that you couldn't have anticipated initially. And that's been beautiful.
Yes. Was learning and working as a way of continuing with you, whatever you do, you bring that package to whatever you do, whether it be singing or presenting or being in musicals and that, and so you bring your whole being, and that is the how you present to me. Whenever I see you perform, um, it feels you bringing Lynelle. The whole of Lynelle is present. And you're
Thank you.
doing that in different ways, because I have seen you at a wedding, and I've seen you on stage or small soirees and in different settings. But every time the whole of you is present.
Thank
And that
you.
is how I see you take your, and when I listen to you now, I realize you take your whole career with you. And how would you advise or guide younger um, artists who might be considering that? How would you advise them to do that, to be present, to take your whole of yourself into whatever you are doing?
Thank you. I would say, as individual as you are, what makes you unique and special is really what will set you apart when you lean into those natural aspects of yourself. And there really isn't any substitute for experience. And sometimes that means looking at people whose career you admire and maybe getting in touch, asking for job shadowing opportunities. You have to be able to also imagine something before you are able to step into it. If you don't know that that possibility exists, then you're never going to go for it because you can't see that in your mind's eye. So I think just a openness and a bravery to always be a lifelong student of whatever it is you want to develop in, I think is such a
Yes.
beautiful quality to say that I have an interest in this. I don't yet know how that's going to manifest, but I'm here and willing to learn and willing to work. And then that's really the kind of attitude I think that puts you in good stead to be developing in ways that you can imagine for yourself.
And so you're saying, I hear you saying you have to be a lifelong learner. You have to keep on learning and keep on
Yes.
developing whatever skills that is, and all the skills that you have also need to be developed. Now,
Yes.
being this artist and being the artist that brings herself to every production, every performance that you do, must take a lot of yourself and personally. How do you manage um, that big load, I would call it? Not in a heavy sense, but
Yeah.
in just what you carry along. Yeah.
Thank you for asking that. I think being intentional about your energy is a big thing. Um, it does take a lot, and as an artist, you are better when you are able to give. You can't pour from an empty cup. So as I'm growing older and learning to take better care of myself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, it really is about keeping the container as clean as possible. And it spills out into different parts of your life as well, not just professionally, but looking at your interpersonal relationships, friendships, professional relationships, family relationships. You have to really be mindful of being part of spaces and relationships that nurture you and that feed you. That at the end of the day makes you a better artist to be able to show up and to give. It's an ideal. Sometimes it is harder than other times when things are maybe happening in your life that are challenging you to have that energy to show up. But I think that is part of the practice. And what I've learned also in recent years is to bring that into the art, your humanity, and to not have to think that you have to be perfect all the time. There is no such thing. And just to show up with your vulnerability and your fallibility and still giving it your best but allowing yourself to be human And it has been surprisingly those moments where I found that people have really connected with the art, where you can be honest about this is maybe something that's challenging or difficult at the moment, but I'm still here and my intention is to give and to share. And then
Yeah.
people resonate with that.
Yeah. How do you stay authentically you? How do you manage that? And how do you make other people realize that this is who I am? These are my boundaries. How do you manage those kinds of things in presenting yourself authentically?
Thank you. It's taken a lot of work. It was not a natural thing, I can say this. Also, because of the community that I was raised in, there were very solid ideas about who I was expected to become. So, a big part of me growing into my authentic self was starting therapy and having an independent voice for me to individuate and self actualize and to have my own voice be the most important voice, regardless of what other people wanted for me, even if they loved me and cared about me. And that's culturally a difficult thing, but it has made me a better human and a better artist. And I try to bring that into my performance because that authenticity for the audience, I think, gives people also the peace of mind to also lean into their own authenticity. So,
Yeah. But I can imagine that it is not an easy thing, and you are still youthful from my point of view. Many others too, but I think when I see you, I read about you, I hear your struggles. You don't shy away from things that might be challenging you. And that in itself is not an easy thing to do, and it is not culturally acceptable even to do that. And you step out and you say what is bothering you in ways that you feel is the way that you want to do it.
thank you,
So
Auntie
that
Beryl.
is something that I admire about you as a youthful person, as a youth, to be able to do that, because I think it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of maturity and growth to be able to do that and step up and say, this is me, and I'm not sure who I am now for this moment, but this is what I'm thinking. And I love that about you. I think you are very courageous.
Thank you so much, Auntie Beryl. I also want to say that as a woman, that is something that I admire and resonate with you as well. That you have taken the platforms even to be able to do something like this podcast and the books that you've written to give an honest account of your lived experience of things that people don't always want to talk about or that they feel ashamed about or that is kind of culturally frowned upon.
Or
So,
uncomfortable.
yes,
Yes, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So I just want to throw that back at you and say
Oh,
thank you.
thank you. I think I regard it as a responsibility. And I can hear you in also doing in a community. You're always aware of your community, and when you a part of a community, you also have responsibilities not only to accept what the community means, but also to give to the community that you are serving. Because with our talents, we are serving
Yeah.
others. So, with all these challenges and great opportunities that you have ever taken up, what is there that still remains to be done?
That's such a great question. Thank you for asking that. It's always interesting sometimes when I perform and people, maybe if that's their first experience of me, then people have ideas of what they think my career could be or waartoe ek nog moet gaan of so on, or do you have aspirations to go and perform at this opera house or that opera house or whatnot. But I think a beautiful evolution of my understanding of life and how I want to live it is that my life is my biggest work of art. That there is the singing or the performing in on one side, but how I am discovering myself and developing even broader than that, that is my biggest act of creativity, of creation. So I don't know yet all of the things that I want to do. I have many dreams of things that are sometimes tied to the classical music or the career, and also things that are separate from that. But I think at the end of the day, what they all have in common is a sense of storytelling, a sense of connection, human connection. I'm fascinated by people and their lived experience and relationships, how we relate to each other. So I think anything that I will endeavor towards in the future will have those things in common. I do see myself at a certain stage maybe writing a memoir of my experiences in this industry and in life. And it might not even just stay in that form on the page.
Yes.
It could become a performance piece. There are themes that I think about and research that are also interesting to me that I might want to turn into creative works. I love collaborating with other artists that are either in my field or adjacent, or just being open to collaborations that are interesting and that expand you as an artist and as a human being. So all of these things, what I've learned from the past is to not limit myself by dreaming too specifically, but to commit to the growth and to be open to the magic just taking you where you need to go.
Yeah. I'm really glad to hear what you said, because this leads me to the next issue that I ask, and I know that you are on that path already, is how are you documenting all these experiences, your life experience, to culminate in something like your memoirs? Because you can answer, because I find I haven't done that groundwork. I could have written richer and more if I had done more of the documenting. So I just want to hear, and it sounds to me that you are engaged in that kind of thing.
I think what's helped a lot, Auntie Beryl, is that the social media or online spaces also keep a record of things. And I've been, I think for the past 7 years or so, was when I started writing about personal experiences and sharing that out in the open. And maybe my cataloging of my life experiences haven't been formalized in a specific format, maar ek weet waar om te begin soek om al die draadjies by mekaar te trek.
Yeah.
So my mom, when she was alive, she used to do the mom thing of cutting out every single newspaper clipping of a ding, you know, and keeping that together. And in the past, that was the best way for us to preserve a legacy, either artistically or whatnot. Maar deesdae, I think it's a combination of different mediums of where our lived experience exists, where we've put it out into.
Yeah. It was so delightful to have this conversation with you, Lynelle. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful, and I'm so glad that we could sit down and just talk. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining On a Way with Beryl Botman in conversation with Lynelle Kenned. Walk tall, tell it all. You've been listening to On a Way with Beryl Botman. You can purchase my books online on Amazon, Take-A-Lot, and at bookstores like Exclusive Books, Bargain Books, Independent Bookstores, and Barnes & Noble internationally. To connect with me, please follow me on Facebook to learn more about my book launches and talks. You can write to me at beryl.botman60@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.